Over the past 48 hours, a significant development has begun to unfold in the Middle East, one that involves the United States and Iran. At the center of it is a place whose name you may have heard before, but whose importance can't be overstated. This is a story about how a single action in a narrow stretch of water can have profound consequences for all of us.
And that place is the Strait of Hormuz. It's a small but incredibly vital sea passage. To really understand what's happening, we first need to appreciate the role this waterway plays in our world. Because the events taking place there right now have the very real potential to send shockwaves through the global economy. And those waves can reach us in ways we might not expect.
So, to make sense of it all, here's how we'll walk through it today. First, we'll cover what exactly happened to start this crisis. Then, we'll look at why this strait is such a global choke point. After that, we'll examine Iran's response and the economic ripple effects we're already seeing. We'll also consider if this could become a wider conflict. And finally, we'll touch on the decades of history that led us here. Let's begin.
Okay, so let's start with the specific events that set this all in motion. It's important to understand exactly what took place, because these actions are what have brought us to this very serious moment.
The key date here is April 13th, 2026. On that day, after a series of diplomatic talks failed, the United States decided to implement a naval blockade. Now, this is not a step that's taken lightly. It's a major escalation, moving beyond things like economic sanctions and into a direct physical action on the seas.
Let's be very clear about what a naval blockade is. In the eyes of international law, it's often considered an act of war. It's a military maneuver meant to cut off a country's access to the sea. The objective here is really twofold. First, to choke off Iran's main source of income, its oil exports, and second, to weaken its ability to project power in this critical waterway.
And this goes beyond just positioning ships. This involves complex military operations. A key part of that is securing the wider region, but it also includes the very dangerous work of clearing naval mines in the strait itself, trying to get ahead of any potential moves by Iran. So it's a combination of a blockade and active military maneuvers, and that is a very serious escalation.
Now, to really grasp the weight of this blockade, you have to understand the geography of the Strait of Hormuz. It's what's known as a geopolitical choke point. Think of it as a bottleneck on a global highway, and whoever controls that bottleneck has enormous leverage.
Just how much leverage? Well, think about this number. Before this crisis began, about a quarter of the world's entire oil supply passed through this single, narrow waterway. A quarter. It's not just a statistic, it's a measure of just how dependent the world's economy is on this one little stretch of sea.
And to put that in perspective, just look at how it compares to other famous maritime routes. The Strait of Hormuz sees more oil tanker traffic than the Strait of Malacca in Asia, and far more than the Suez Canal. This means that the economic health of huge industrial countries, think China, Japan, South Korea, and nations across Europe and North America, is directly tied to things remaining stable in this one corridor.
But that stability is gone. The immediate effect of the blockade is pretty clear. Shipping traffic has fallen off a cliff. The risk is now so high that insurance costs for tankers have skyrocketed, making it too expensive for many to even attempt the journey. So, ships are avoiding the area, and that vital flow of energy is being squeezed.
So that brings us to Iran's side of this. In response to the blockade, Iran is using its most powerful asset, its geography. This is a classic example of what's called an asymmetric strategy. They aren't trying to match the US Navy ship for ship. Instead, they're using other tactics to exploit vulnerabilities.
What we're hearing is that Iran is activating its defense systems. This includes deploying naval mines to make certain areas impassable, moving mobile missile launchers to the coastline, and using their intimate knowledge of the narrow shipping lanes that every big tanker has to pass through. It's all designed to make passage through the strait incredibly risky for anyone.
And this really gets to the heart of the matter. Iran may not have a massive blue water navy that can challenge the US fleet on the open ocean, but here, in its own backyard, its geography gives it the ability to cause a massive disruption to global trade, essentially holding a huge portion of the world's energy supply at risk.
So let's talk about how this all translates into dollars and cents. Because this is where a geopolitical event in a faraway place starts to have a very real impact on all of us, affecting everything from global markets right down to the price we pay at the pump.
The most immediate effect we've seen has been on the price of crude oil. The markets reacted almost instantly. Before the blockade, a barrel of oil was trading at around $85. In just the few days since, it's jumped past that $100 mark and is now sitting at $105. That spike is what traders call a geopolitical risk premium.
For those of us at home, that higher oil price shows up in some very familiar ways.
The first place you'll see it, of course, is at the gas station, but the impact is much bigger than that. When fuel costs more, it costs more to transport all goods. That means we could start to see the prices of everything from food at the grocery store to everyday products go up.
And this really brings up a question for all of us to think about. It's a stark reminder of how connected we are to the rest of the world. How does this kind of global uncertainty start to factor into your own family's budget? It shows how events on the world stage can have very local consequences.
Now, one of the biggest concerns in a situation like this is that it might not stay contained. An event this big and a place this important always carries the risk of pulling in other countries, and that could make a tense situation far more dangerous.
And there are other nations watching this very closely. Israel, for instance, has long viewed Iran as a major security threat. On the other side of the globe, you have China, which is the world's biggest oil importer. Beijing has already expressed its concern about anything that might threaten its energy supply. When you have so many different interests involved, a local crisis can quickly become a global one.
To really understand why we're here today, it's so important to look at the history between the United States and Iran. These tensions didn't just appear out of nowhere. They're the result of a long and often difficult relationship stretching back for more than 70 years.
The major turning point was the 1979 Islamic Revolution, which fundamentally changed the political map of the Middle East. The hostage crisis that followed created a deep mistrust that has really never healed. The decades since have been filled with conflict and containment, from the tanker war in the 1980s to years of tough economic sanctions over Iran's nuclear program. And while there have been brief moments of diplomacy, that underlying suspicion has always remained. This long history is the backdrop for everything we're seeing today.
And I think that brings us to the most important takeaway from all of this. It's captured perfectly in this idea. A crisis in one narrow waterway can quickly become a global concern. It's a powerful reminder that in our modern world, an event in a small stretch of water thousands of miles away can have a direct impact on the security and the financial well-being of us all.
And so we're left with the fundamental question: what happens next? Will we see a move towards stabilization, perhaps through quiet, back-channel diplomacy? Or is this the beginning of a further escalation? We don't have the answer yet. But what is clear is that the outcome will be felt not just in the headlines, but in the daily lives of people all around the world. It is certainly a situation that warrants our thoughtful and informed attention.